So we asked a few people to share their habits that they'd like to change, where they've realized that these often do cause negative results, as well as habits in general that they've noted that they feel need attention.
Good evening. I would like to speak on what I do want. One of my habits that I do want to get rid of. It would be procrastination. I feel like that is a big issue in my life. I feel like it limits me from doing things and doing things correctly. I've seen that with my exams, and yeah, I'm still working on it, but yeah, it's tough. Hey, and another would also be I can't always say no. I think it's because I have so much kindness. So even when something would affect me negatively, I know that I'm helping the next person. So that that as well, I'd like to try and limit myself from saying yes a lot. Um, yeah, and I think that's it. Thank you for the opportunity, Vida.
Something that I would like to improve on and that I definitely struggle with is putting myself out there in the public eye. I'm very uncomfortable when it comes to doing things like presentations or even using social media as an advertising platform or marketing platform. Definitely something I need to improve on because those tools are available and at your disposal. Potentially making a little bit of headway on that because I am actually doing this, which I'm not very comfortable in doing. But yes, so I suppose improving slowly.
A habit that I would like to change is social media platforms. Social media platform has areas that helps, but the disadvantages are high. For example, Facebook, Twitter, or TikTok. Most of people are overdoing it. There is no privacy of not only individuals, but the country has lost focus and integrity.
Hi, everybody. I'm here today to discuss a habit that I'd like to change. And I'm sure everybody can relate to this habit. It's called forming assumptions and not listening. And I often do it where people will be telling me a story or a sentence, and I'll think that I know the end of the story. And then I'll pipe up and finish their sentence before they have actually started telling the good part. And I have always been wanting to fix this habit, and I feel like I am getting there, but it does take a lot of work. And thank you very much.
Hi, Vida. Thank you for the opportunity to allow for me to also speak or touch on one of the bad habits that I have. The one that I really struggle with the most is being able to say the big No. I found myself saying yes to things that I shouldn't have been saying yes to in the first place. There's been some repercussions from saying yes all the time. I found myself frustrated, burnt out, so much to the extent that I've even lost friendships. Well, I've just kind of severed ties with people because I've allowed people to kind of overstep boundaries, always asking for things and me always giving, and then resenting myself afterwards, and then blaming them on top of it, not taking accountability for the fact that in my saying yes all the time, I have actually taught these people how to treat me, that I'm an easy target, that Jade will just say yes to everything. So yes, that's me. Help me, please.
Changing a habit is tricky. We have these habits, these patterns of behavior that we implement daily most of the time. And when it comes to changing habits, we know that it's not an easy thing to do. Very often the habits in our lives actually give us a sense of security because we feel that we can identify with them. This is who I am. This is how I relate to my environment, to people around me. And if I suddenly change this, I feel a little bit lost at times. And it's also difficult. You know, we very often decide to implement change. We decide to change a habit, but to sustain that is not easy. And we find that we often return to the original habit. So what I'd like to just think about today is when it comes to changing habits, one method that works quite well is to look at the fundamental habit, the fundamental pattern that is causing the behavior in so many different aspects of our lives. Very often what we do is we try to change surface habits. And that's really addressing the symptom rather than the cause, because, you know, those habits that we implement in various areas of our lives during the day are related to fundamental habits that are very deep set. And when we address those fundamentals and start to modify the fundamental, we realize that by altering that fundamental habit even slightly, we start to see very positive results in various areas of our lives, rather than trying to, what do they say in the old days? They used to say, put the cart before the horse. What we do is we actually address the fundamental, the cause, and that snowballs into a positive result. So when we look at something like, I think somebody today did mention ineffective listening, very often not paying attention when someone is speaking or assuming what someone is going to say before they've completed their message. Now, this, as we know, stems from a habit of generally not paying attention. And because we live in a busy world and we have such busy lives, we are distracted. We are distracted by so many things, and we've got to keep so many balls in the air that we find that our concentration levels are not what they used to be. But it comes again down to choice. So we are in charge of how we think, how we implement actions, what we do with our thoughts, with our mindset, with our mental software, and we can choose to pay attention. So rather than starting with the communication side and saying, how do I pay attention when people speak, it would be more effective to say, how do I pay attention in general? And to start working on paying attention. So being more present focused, whether you are baking a cake or typing a document, or you're involved in your exercise program, it doesn't matter what you're doing, but to make sure that your focus is entirely on the space that you are in and not to allow your mind to wander. So as you have those thoughts that come to mind about what happened yesterday or this morning or what you have to do in half an hour, you start controlling that and say, hold on, back to the present moment. Focus on the present moment. Give it all my attention. Monitor distractions. And as you start to implement that in all areas of your life, you find obviously that you become more effective in all areas, but your listening starts to improve, because when you are then interacting with someone, you are giving them your full attention. You aren't sitting writing or checking your screen or, you know, preparing your schedule for later or deciding what you're going to prepare for dinner, whatever the case may be. You're totally focused on their input, allowing them to deliver their message fully, and then you respond. And you find that that communication improves. Do you agree with that, Cara? How do you feel about that?
100%. I agree with you. Definitely. We're always rushing around and so busy, and we think we're multitasking by planning while we're doing things, but that's also when we do things like we lose our car keys, or we can't remember where we've put our phone because we put it down somewhere while our mind's been somewhere else and not, as you say, present focused. So I think that is so important. That's such an important fundamental to look at. Another one that was mentioned was the screen time. And I think that is a general, as it says in the video, general concern, where what we actually need to do is allocate time for different aspects of our lives, our relationships, physical work, etc., because we owe it to ourselves. We owe it to ourselves and we owe it to others to manage influences around us. And screen time is a temptation that, thanks to technology, is there all the time. So it is something that we do have to manage, because otherwise it can creep in and start affecting all areas of our lives. While we are cooking or working, or when you say, oh, I'm going to start doing this, I just want to, and the next thing, a few hours have passed, or in our relationships, all different areas. So it is a very important aspect that I think that we need to address, and we need to manage. And as you say, we need to take charge and break that habit, because it is a habit that is so easy to form, because it's just so easily accessible. It's so convenient that it's there all the time. So we need to take charge and manage that.
Right. And it comes back to organization. So when we make that choice to change that fundamental habit, which is how I organize my life. And I think this really rides on the back of what I mentioned earlier, because it comes back to focus and attention. So when you start to say, I need to have more balance, and why do I need to have more balance? Because that gives me a better quality of life. So absolutely. I need to have more balance by making my relationships really beneficial, interacting fully, focusing, concentrating, whether it's spending time with my child or my partner, whether it's in a business meeting, paying attention in relationships and giving 100%. If I'm walking in nature, actually stopping to gain benefit from what I'm noticing. We can walk down a beautiful path in the park and not notice the flowers or the sunset or the birds, because we are so preoccupied. So making that choice to say every area of my life needs to be slotted in for balance in my day. And by doing that, automatically, there will be a time allocation for screen time, rather than screen time encroaching into every area of my life. Yes. And, I think most of us can stop to realize that when we don't take control and when we allow these influences to subtly infiltrate, because that's what happens. It happens without us realizing. And when we stop to think of where we are and how negative these habits can be upon our lives, that in itself is reason to stop and think, well, it can be a selfish need. I need, first of all, to have a better quality of life. And then I obviously need to think about how my interactions with others can be more positive through this. So coming to, I know someone also mentioned being in the public eye. And, that self-consciousness, and this is such a common one. I know we've discussed with many people and run many programs on presentations and standing, presenting to large numbers of people. So the first thing that comes to mind for everyone is that everybody's looking at my flaws, or what if I'm asked a question that I can't answer and I'm made a fool of. So very seldom is it a case of, I don't know my content, I don't know what I want to say. We know what we want to say, but we are so self-conscious. And I think this really ties into that fundamental of self-confidence. Why am I so self-conscious? It goes back to that bridge of belonging. I have a right to be here. No human being is perfect. We are all unique. And of course, we will have a faux pas. Of course, we will make a mistake. There will be times when we stumble over our words. There will be times when we are asked a question that we cannot answer, whatever the case may be. But when we start to accept that we are all unique, we are all imperfect, and we build our self-confidence on that, our sense of belonging, and we realize that we don't have to be perfect all the time, that it's fine not to be perfect. And also to realize that we don't need to project an image of perfection to others, So when we are aware of our buck two that we've discussed in so much detail, and we are taking charge from an internal point of view, using our internal power, we also don't have a huge need for acknowledgement, acceptance, and recognition. So I'm here, I've got this to say, you might be looking, I've just changed my hair color, so I'm still getting used to that myself. We change, we do things, we we look different. We all have physical aspects of ourselves that we aren't crazy about, whatever the case may be, but we're human. And when we become comfortable with ourselves within our bhakti, I think that's what enables us to then be more free with being the center of attention.
Definitely. It does, absolutely. And when we stop and we look around and realize that, as you say, everybody's human, and we see other people who also are in situations where maybe they make a mistake or they can't answer a question, we realize that, how we view them, and then we feel about ourselves and we think, it's fine, it's human, as you say. And when we are in our bhakti, we always do our best. So if we have a presentation, for example, we will prepare as best we can for that presentation. So that should give us the confidence then to go in and say, but I know what I'm doing, I'm competent. And if there's a question that I don't know, well, I can always deal with it and say to the person, I'll get back to you. But it comes back to that sense of belonging that we were discussing, that bridge of belonging, where I deserve to be here. I have a right to be here. I've done my work. I'm prepared. I can have an opinion. And that gives us the confidence to then stand up and, if you make a mistake or you say the wrong word or something happens, you need to clear your throat while you were speaking now, then you do. And you don't feel self-conscious about it.
That's right. I think also, just to add on to that before we move on, I think the fact that others will not always be in agreement with us is also true. There will be people that are critical. There will be people that are challenging. There will be people who are blatantly rude or nasty. And I think that's a fact of life as well. And it's all about how you process that and, if you let that get to you. So yes, that's life. And you won't please all the people all of the time. But when you are strong in your bhakti, you will take criticism where it's warranted and you will be, you will use it constructively. But if there's pure nastiness or criticism that is unfounded, well, you let it go, you release it, because that's life, rather than holding on to it and allowing it to affect you personally.
That's it. From your bhakti, you can assess and say, is it valid? Can I learn from it? Is it something I should do differently? Or was it just as you say, to be nasty or mean or petty just because they could? And that does happen, as you say. There was another video as well, which I think is also very a big one for a lot of people, is the inability to say no. And I think a lot of people through the years, I've met so many people who say that, and they say, I can't say no because I feel so bad. And we have this sense that we are responsible for helping others and making their lives easier and for their happiness. And I think when we realize that every single one of us is in our own bhakti and we're all on our journey on this highway of life, and we say, I'm not responsible for other people's happiness. It doesn't mean that I'm just going to go and do what I want to do and disregard other people completely. Yes, I take other people into consideration. Yes, I help out where I can. I want to be kind and helpful and considerate. I don't want to hurt other people. But there has to be that point where I say, I have to look after myself too. So it's that balance of not offending people, helping other people wherever I can, being kind and considerate, but also making sure that I have my journey as best I can, and balancing the two. It doesn't have to be a case of, well, I help you, so I never do what I do. It's not like I'm going to say, well, I'm in my bhakti, but I give everyone the petrol, so I can't go anywhere because my bhakti is out of petrol, or diesel or whatever. I'll give you some until we can both get to the next station and fill up, and then we can carry on. Or I will tow you or whatever, but we'll look at something that's mutually beneficial.
Yes.
And I think that, and sometimes, I'm not saying it's always going to be 50-50. Sometimes you will have to even step out of your comfort zone, but you then choose and say, but I'm still happy to do that. It's not impacting negatively overall on my life. It's where we feel that we are continuously doing that, and we feel like we are doing it to a point that our lives are not getting anywhere. Like we actually need to stop and say, where does that habit come from? Why do I feel that it's my responsibility to get behind everybody's bhakti and give them a big push, I can teach them how to drive their car. I can give them manuals, I can give them directions, but at the end of the day, they are the ones that need to get in and drive it. And I need to drive. I mean, the aim is for us all to be in our batus happily driving along this road of life. And that includes me as well. And I think we need to change shift that mindset of feeling guilty or responsible.
Right. That's right. That mindset of being a people pleaser. That I'm here just to make sure that everybody else is happy, to my detriment a lot of the time. And I think it does. It comes from that fundamental, and probably there we would need to address quite a few of those labels that we see as positive. I think somebody in one of the videos mentioned something about I like to be kind, but kindness, you know, when you go beyond the threshold and kindness starts to continuously shoot you in the foot, that's when you have to say, hold on, I need to protect myself. And why do we do it? It's just as we would protect ourselves from any other harm. We need to look after ourselves. So we are here to look after our own safety and health and happiness. And we can't keep on sacrificing that. Yes.
And actually, if you think about it, if we don't look after ourselves, eventually we get to a point where we can't even help the people around us anymore either. And then what good are we to them as well? So part of our responsibility to them is the responsibility to ourselves as well, to make sure that we look after ourselves so that we can help continue to contribute to them and look after, have that balance. Right. It's not fair to have that imbalance to anybody eventually, because it creates dependency with them, which isn't fair on them.
Yes.
And it drains us. And at the end of the day, it's just an totally unhealthy dynamic when we should be striving for positive interdependence.
That's right. I think also the relationships can often go sour, and I think that was mentioned somewhere along the line, because as you say, we keep on giving and giving and giving until we feel depleted, and then we become resentful, and obviously that other person will continue to take while we're giving. So we keep on giving. We then blame them. It's almost like, but you should have stopped taking. You are using everything that I have to give, and yet you still take more. But it's actually up to us to say no, because when it becomes a difficult relationship, when the relationship goes sour, everyone suffers, and it's done no good to anyone. So that assertiveness, I think that's another whole discussion, but that assertiveness is so important. And then there was also that point made about procrastination. And I think this is also such a good one, because somebody once said to me, we were talking about self-discipline and the self-discipline to get up and take the action. So whether that action is spring cleaning a cupboard, it doesn't matter what it is, going and sorting out the storeroom or the garage. What we do is we tend to put these things off. We procrastinate. And we spoke about self-discipline. And what is self-discipline? Self-discipline is very much a case of saying, I don't want to place myself at a disadvantage. So self-discipline means that I'm going to take an action that is beneficial to me. And when we've discussed this previously, but when we look at the fact that we do have this need to protect ourselves, we aren't going to walk straight into the fire. We do protect ourselves wherever we can, but we don't realize that perhaps by inaction, we cause ourselves a lot of harm. So if I, for example, have to prepare for an exam, but I continuously procrastinate, when it gets to the point that I write the exam and I haven't prepared, who suffers with the poor mark? Only me. So when we start to put that into perspective and think, well, self-discipline is really about saying, take the action as best you can. Obviously, if it's within your control, take the action, because ultimately you will derive a benefit from taking that action. And if you decide to put off taking the action for whatever reason, very often this comes in again, and it ties in what you've just mentioned, Cara, which is our inability to say no. So I might have some priorities right now on my list, but somebody calls me or says, let's go out somewhere. And because I want to keep them happy, I put my priorities onto the back burner. And I go off with them to please them. Who suffers in the long run? Me, because I haven't achieved what I need to within a time period, and I suffer the consequences. So why do I do it? To be happy? We're not always happy when we have to take the action, because it's like buckle down, nose to the grindstone, go into that storeroom, get it sorted out, but it's done for a reason. And then you can walk away and say, sure, a job done, benefit achieved, results good, and now I can go out with my friends and have a good time, because I know that's been dealt with. And I think that's where procrastination needs to be addressed, not really looking at specific time management tools, but really looking at my attitude to putting things off and how it affects me in a negative way.
Exactly. Well, I think the time management tools are only effective as the attitude of the person who's using them, which will also be a whole other discussion at some stage. I think. Yes. But it is absolutely, and it's focusing not just on the short term but long term. So short term, yes, I don't feel like doing it now. I'm just going to leave it, and I can leave it. And in the short term, I have the pleasure. But the long term implication of that is maybe something that I don't want to experience. So I need to relook at that and be aware of that and think of that. And yeah. Yes. I think that's something that also a lot of people have mentioned through the years to me, that procrastination.
That's right. And to realize, as we've said, this is my journey on my own. Ultimately, I feel the pain. I deal with the bad decisions. Others can feel sympathy for me, but I am the one experiencing the result of my decisions as I travel in my baptu along the journey of life. So if I continuously cause problems for myself that were not necessary, that could have not occurred if I had taken the action when I should have, my journey will be so much smoother. So exactly. I do it for me and my experience, my life experience.
That's it, and we need to look, and that's it, with every negative habit that we have, and we're all human and we all have them. So it's something that we are all working on all the time, is being aware of those bad habits and looking at how they can snowball, and they can have that ripple effect on every area of our lives, whether it's saying no at work so that I have so much work that I can't go to gym, or I can't spend time with my family, or I have to cancel a social engagement or a hobby or something, or the screen time that's impacting, and I should be sorting out a cupboard, but I'm not because I'm spending time on a screen, or anything. So if we look at every single one that we've discussed today, we can say it doesn't just affect one area, that has that huge snowball or ripple effect in every single area of our lives. And that is the motivation for us to actually take charge and say, I am taking a stand now, and I'm replacing that. And yes. I need to form a new positive habit to replace that negative one.
Yes, most definitely.